Hi, welcome to Tech Valley Game Space Game Club podcast. I am, hosting this evening because we had a very unorthodox method of choosing games this time around. We had a public poll, since we're recording this in December, about 2 weeks from Christmas, and we kind of figured everyone was really busy, which of course is a great time to start doing like weird experimentational stuff with our format. But we had a poll where we chose 3 short games on our Facebook group, and people would play them. The games we chose that we're going to talk about soon are Little Inferno, Uncle Who Works for Nintendo, Nights into Dreams, Christmas Nights, and Save the Date, although that one we marked as optional. I kind of forget the contents of all those games. So, I love this opening right now.
Save the Date is on there, so I actually played one.
Yeah, you did it.
Oh, cool.
That's the optional one. The other 3 are mandatory.
They were mandatory.
Ruh-roh.
Didn't play any of them.
2/3?
So I mean, we'll see how this goes. I feel like we're going to just wing it a lot this podcast because I think like how many people actually played all the games?
I only got to watch a playthrough of Nights. That was the closest I could get with what I had to do.
That was honestly the one I was most curious about, but I didn't end up playing it or watching a meeting on it.
Trying to think what's the best way to do it. I'll start. I played. We'll just go around and we'll just say like what games we played and what we thought about them real quick. I played Little Inferno. Is that by Tomorrow Corporation? Is that the
Yes.
name? They did World of Goo. They're very famous for that. And Little Inferno was this game about burning, like buying stuff and then burning it so you can keep warm.
Then you learn. Burn and learn.
Burn and learn. I played it on the Wii U about 2 years ago, and I did not get a chance to revisit it. So all my memories of it will have to be rejogged. But I remember at the time I liked it, and I also played it through like the entirety of it. And then my phone went off. My very vague memories of it. I kind of liked it, which actually kind of ties into our next game, Uncle Who Works at Nintendo. That was by Michael.
Starts with an L. Thanks.
Lutz, I
Yes.
think. Michael Lutz. It's a twine game about you're playing this kid who's 11 years old, and you go over your best friend's house, and their uncle is an uncle who works in Nintendo, kind of like the famous like white lie kids would say. They would say, I have the best. I'm the best in Nintendo games because my uncle works in Nintendo. I know all the secrets. So it's kind of a game. It's like a very interesting horror game about that, which we'll get into it more. But that one I enjoyed a lot. It's very interesting. There's like a lot of things I would like to talk about that, but we'll let everyone else talk at this point. Go to you next. Yeah.
How would I start?
Just say your name and what games you played and what you thought.
I'm William Carpentier, and I didn't really get to play any games because I'm a student at Sage and had a lot of catching up to do with the end of the semester, but I did manage to watch a playthrough of Nathan's Journey into Dreams in Christmas Nights, and it was pretty good gameplay, but I did not like the fact they used actual Christmas music as the music background. Just made me think too much of the whole Christmas being getting too commercial thing, and that really annoys me, honestly. But one thing that I saw in the playthrough that I figured would have been interesting is that for a while, the actions of the player actually matched up with the music itself. I figured if that went away throughout the whole game, that would probably make it a lot better. And as for the story, it was mainly just a boy and a girl all going about Christmas Eve, and they notice that all the adults seem to be not noticing something important. Then they look over at the nearby A-Town Square and they see that their Christmas tree doesn't have a star on top. And basically, you try going through dreams to find that star again. So again, not much of a story. That good?
Yeah.
My name is Kat. Out of the games that were suggested to us, I played Little Inferno a couple years ago with a bunch of friends at a con, actually, and that was really fun. Good group activity, surprisingly, burning things. And today I played Uncle, who works at Nintendo, and actually I'm pretty impressed by that one. I like the tone, but I guess I'll get more into that later. But I don't know about the other two. No earthly clue. So that's what I heard just now about a missing star and some junk.
My name is Robert. So I hadn't played any of these games before this week. I remembered Knights coming out back when it was first released, probably was the Saturn. But I did play through Knights 2 nights ago. And it was quite the experience having to essentially spend 3 hours just to unlock a stage that takes 10 minutes. But yeah, I played through that, and it was quite the experience. I'm sure we'll get more into that. I ended up playing Little Inferno last night. Played through pretty much from start to finish that. And then today, after work up until this very point in time, I am playing Uncle Works for Nintendo. I had wanted to play Save the Date, I just did not get a chance to.
Okay. I'm Jamie. Save the Date is the only game that I've played out of these. Played it a while back. It was a finalist in the Independent Games Festival. So I played it at the Independent Games Festival and played it for probably like 10 minutes and thought, this is the worst thing that I've ever played in the Independent Games Festival. Why is this game in here? Like, there's nothing remotely interesting about it. And then played it for about 2 more minutes and was like, this is amazing. Like, this is one of the best games I've ever played. So, yeah, I don't know, because we're doing this mixed format, like, I feel like it's a game that ideally shouldn't be spoiled, but I probably will be spoiling it to some extent, because that's what we do on this podcast.
Aww.
Well,
But for now,
Well, yeah, if you're the only one that played
you and
it.
I.
okay, we don't have to talk about it then.
I thought that's what we're here to do. Anyway, all right.
That's the price you pay for putting 4 games in the.
We
lineup.
tried something.
I'm detecting a little
We tried
salt.
something new. Doesn't always work.
And picking a game that's very bad to spoil.
Anyway, all I will say about Save the Date for the moment is that I really like it and really recommend it. It's a Renpai game with an interesting story. If you're a fan of Undertale, or if you're a fan of games that do interesting things with kind of breaking the fourth wall style narratives, I think you'll like it. Even
I
that
love
is like...
Undertale. Definitely don't want to hear spoilers for that one then.
Yeah, I think, it holds up pretty well regardless. But anyway, I played Knights as well back when it first came out. I played it at Toys R Us when they had a demo of it set up.
Was that right next to the N64?
Yeah, so
Wow.
Nintendo had the demos of the Nintendo 64 before it was out, but you could go to Toys R Us and play it.
Didn't
What
we
year
make-
was this?
This was whatever year,
Mid-90s?
90s. Yeah, 6.
95.
I think it was about 10 years. I was about 10 years old when it came out.
Yeah.
Wait,
All right.
1996?
I'm old.
So we probably made fun of it for not being true 3D like
Right. Yes.
Mario 64
That's exactly my experience with Knights. Was there was a kiosk of Knights set up next to a kiosk of Super Mario 64.
More than just one kiosk.
All right.
For
Let's be super precise.
Well-
That's the important part of this.
this is
so
going to
anyway.
be the best part of the podcast, I think.
The multiple kiosks.
Talking about we went to Toys R Us to spend the day there because they had a bunch of Mario 64 demos set up before the game even came out.
Right.
So we spent a whole Saturday there, all day playing Mario 64.
Yeah, learning how to use an analog stick because it was the first game that we had ever played that had 3D. It was 3D.
Yeah.
It was so real. It was unbelievable. And then we played Knights. It's like, this is two-dimensional. This is old. That's old news. I don't care
It's
anymore.
on rails, wasn't it?
Yeah, everything's going to be
It's
3D
on
now.
rails.
I'm not flying through no hoops.
Oh.
But in hindsight, I think I don't know. I think Knights got a little more overlooked than it deserved. I think it's at least the design of the world and the characters is very distinctive. So it's got that going for it. But yeah, and I haven't played Christmas Nights, unfortunately.
I played about an hour of Little Inferno a year ago, and I played Save the Date, but we're not going to talk about it.
That was an optional game.
Yeah.
I feel a little salt now. Coming from some people. That's alright.
The discussion will be optional as well. We'll leave it as an option.
Well, we can save it for last and tell everybody to leave the room when and me and you can talk about
It's
it.
like the final confrontation.
Game Club Junior.
Well,
For it.
The exclusive version.
bonus content.
Cool. What now, John?
So,
Lean on.
I don't know. I kind of want to talk about Uncle Works for Nintendo. It seems like people played that the most, or played that the most recently. There'll be spoilers for that, I guess.
We always do spoilers for every game we talk about, just
Yeah.
so you know. The premise of the podcast is that you have played the games ahead of time.
Presumably,
Listeners.
presumably you played
At
more all the games and not
Well,
been like us.
If anybody in here doesn't want it spoiled, they can leave the room.
That was purely for the benefit of our podcast listeners.
Yeah.
But they can leave the room too.
I think they probably have.
So, Uncle works in Nintendo, which I really wish I could know how to pronounce his last name. Michael Lutz?
Lutz. Probably Lutz.
I follow him on Twitter. I should know how to say his name. But the idea of the game is kind of just like about like, you know, your childhood and how you like build up these like mythical ideas of, you know, like you play all these video games and stuff, and then like, you know, all the creators and everyone behind them turn into these like legendary figures. So the plot of it is you are invited for a sleepover to your friend's house, like your best friend's house, and you haven't been on like I'm trying to think of the word. You haven't been on good terms. So this is like an idea of like you go over to his house and you like try and make up and be friends again. And you know, when you go over there, you like, you know, you do like normal like kid stuff. And then his mom says his uncle is going to be coming home tonight. And you start remembering about his uncle is the uncle who works for Nintendo. And basically, like, you know, it's slowly revealed, and correct me if I misremember some of this stuff, but like basically the reason you aren't that close friends anymore is because your friend has been kind of been like very flaunty and showy about like all the cool stuff his uncle's been giving him, but it's all like weird stuff. Like you remember one of the examples they talk about is he gets like a shiny Mewtwo before like anyone else does, and it's actually kind of interesting because they explain like why that's a big deal because I didn't know like the history of Pokemon or anything. But the Mewtwo was like a promotional Mew or Mewtwo?
It was Mew.
It was Mew.
Yeah.
I don't know what a Pokemon is. But it's like, he's saying like, his Mew was like, it had like claws and it had like, it was a little fiercer and would like beat up all the other Pokemon and a little more viciously. And, he starts like, you kind of start remembering like all the stuff that he gets from his uncle is kind of a little bit off. And like, he starts showing you like, at his house, he starts showing you like all the secret stuff. Like he shows him like I think it's supposed to be like the original Xbox. Like this takes place like around the N64 era, but I think he gets shown like a PlayStation 2 as well or something.
Yeah, I kind of got that impression.
Like it's supposed to be like advanced stuff, and then there maybe a Wii. I don't remember.
Stuff that shouldn't technically exist
At the time.
Which is the interesting part.
And then the uncle comes home, and the uncle is kind of this like. In spoiler territory, I guess. The uncle is like this malevolent entity who's like who eats children basically and uses like the guise as being an uncle. He's like everyone's uncle basically. So he like goes from like family to family and like encourages the children like I'll give you video games if you like lure your friends to your house and then I'll eat them sort of thing. So it's kind of like there's a lot of interesting things that he does with the story because he does like a lot of fourth wall breaking stuff. Robert was like asking me a question which was kind of interesting, which I don't know if you want to talk about that. You said I forgot what you said.
Well, okay, so the first time I had completed the game, I got what looked like a bunch of error messages, and the second time I went through the game, I got some more error messages, and I wondered, is this actually the game screwing up, or is this actually supposed to be the way it was? Because I could understand, if one ending was glitched out on purpose, but they have all the endings glitched out. I was like, this seems like maybe there might actually be a problem with the game, but apparently there wasn't.
Yeah. So it does like a lot of, there's some like hacky stuff I think to get like a couple of the endings. It gets interesting because there's like certain things you do when the uncle arrives. Like there's ways you can escape or there's ways you can like, barter your way to freedom or become like a slave basically or something, to spare your life. But overall, it's kind of just all comes down to like the relationship between you and your friend, because it kind of explores like why would a kid like want to like hurt your what supposedly is like his best friend, his or her best friend, because you can choose like the name of your best friend, but it's kind of like exploring the reasons of like why would kids like lie to each other about this sort of thing. Like my uncle is the coolest uncle. Like you won't meet him, but like he works for Nintendo sort of thing. Kind of wondering the other people who played it got like that sort of impression from it.
I guess it's very much about social dynamics as a kid. Well, not very much, but at least a little. It does touch upon that a bit. But what I really liked is you have to play through the game multiple times in order to kind of get a sense of what's going on. First time I played it, I got killed. Got eaten up by the uncle, and that was not a good time. Second time I actually managed to get out. I managed to get away. I called my mom on the phone. I was like, pick me up, Mom, I'm leaving. And so that was actually really nice. Because I didn't expect I'd be able to get away at all. And from then on, now that I knew I had like an easy way out, I started toying with the idea like, okay, let's see if I can actually save my friend, because after, my mom sent the sitter to pick me up, my friend disappeared. Her family abruptly moved away with no explanation. I was like, oh, okay, that's ominous. Okay, so what can I do to save my friend? That kind of became my goal, and it's delightfully creepy, all the different things you can find out while snooping around the house. Like at one point, I'm not sure what this signifies in game, but there's a sequence where you go and you're eating like spaghetti and meatballs with your friend and her family. Well, she was a girl for me because I picked a girl name, but like there's a passage about her father teasing you, like, oh, what trouble have you kids been getting into at school? And he's drinking lemonade. Third or fourth time I played the game, the text was highlighted and said he was drinking a beer. And I clicked on that text and it was like, oh wait, no, her father doesn't drink beer. He doesn't drink alcohol at all. That's so silly. He must be misremembering. But from that point on, whenever I went through other playthroughs of the game, you could skip to a certain point, and the game asked me, did your friend's father, was he drinking beer? And the one answer was, I don't know, and the other one was, no. So, I don't know, but weird stuff like that plays with your perception a lot. So screwy. I kind of like it, though.
Yeah. It kind of, like, I mean, it all kind of ties into, like, you know, how kids remember things and, like, what they'll believe, I think. Because, like, you know, that's, like, a really big thing is, like, the friend will say something and you can call him or her out on it. And, like, their reaction will change based on, like, you know, if you're being, like, antagonistic to them. Because, like, they'll say something like, oh, I was, like, you know, the best at, like, Mario Kart or something. You know, I beat everyone. And it's like, you could say, like, I was there, you know, at that party and you didn't beat anyone. And they'll get, like, really upset. There is, like, a part where you can say, I don't believe your uncle works for Nintendo. And they'll, like, you can get into, like, a physical fight with them over that. Which I kind of, like, I didn't have, like, I have friends like that. Where they wouldn't get, like, physically upset and, like, violent. But, like, I have friends where they'd say something, like, a little bit outlandish, and you would call them out on it, and I mean, I guess everyone kind of have friends like that, but that's sort of the point. But I did like, you know, like, what was the father drinking is kind of like a focal point of, you know, how your game plays, basically. Because if you don't, I think if you, like, if you select, like, you don't know what they're thinking, then it gets harder to, like, you know, the choices you make or are able to make are a little bit, like, more clouded because, like, you know, you're kind of, like, questioning yourself and, like, you know, what you remember. Because, like, the whole thing is basically based on memories. Because there's, like, one point where you can sort of remember where I think there's, like, another family where the same thing happens, or they, like, disappear in the middle of the night, and there's, like, a storm or something, and, like, the friend's like, oh, I don't remember any storm, and there's, like, you can keep, like, questioning that if you remembered the father drank lemonade or something. I think.
Yeah, well, actually, there was a point where if you go back into the kitchen after you're sent to, like, the den in the living room, you walk in there and the parents are still in the kitchen, but they're just, like, frozen there.
Yeah.
And it's super creepy. And you can, like, try to get their attention and be like, hello? And, you know, they don't respond. So then you go back to your friend, you can be like, why are your parents acting like weirdos? And your friend freaks out. And yeah, that was super interesting.
Yeah. I forget how you, like, actually beat the game, because there's something where you have to get, like, a Game Boy or something through, like, one of the playthroughs, and then you use the Game Boy to escape. Because it's like I forget, it's like something kind of weird. The final ending is, like, you escape with your friend, you, like, make up, and then the uncle who works for Nintendo kind of freaks out because they get their power from, I don't know, I guess kids believe in Nintendo or something.
How I interpreted it was they just literally get power from the kids just straight up dying, but the uncle is, like, some kind of freaky abomination, and when he eats the kids, like, there was some sort of a passage about, like, how people don't die all at once when he eats them, like, they're still alive in him somehow, so, like, your character is able to, like, remember old playthroughs and can, like, rally the other kids and your friend to kind of, like, fight back, I think.
Yeah, I remember that. Like, I think they're saying, like, it erodes the memories of his victims. He doesn't really, like, kill them all at once.
A digital demon
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of a freaky game.
I like it a lot. It's actually surprisingly optimistic when you get the nice ending. But yeah, you get into the confrontation with the uncle when you trigger certain dialogue options with your friend, and you get them to kind of start telling you about the uncle, and they're like, oh, he showed up at my house one day though during that big storm. He was cold and hungry, and I answered the door, and my brother had been picking on me, and I told him to ask him to get rid of my brother, and he did. And he's like this freaky reality warper. That's why the parents were acting so weird, and lots of stuff that doesn't add up. But almost
Yeah,
like
definitely a demon.
yeah, like glitches in reality too. It's like it sort of foreshadowed the whole beer thing and how they could manipulate you. But your friend basically made a wish, I guess, or not. They wanted to be the best at everything. They wanted to be the best at games. They wanted to have everything relating to games. They just wanted to be that kid, And this demon was like, hey, I can give you that. Just lure some of your friends over here and I'll eat them. And the demon thing started with the character's brother. And that's actually interesting because your character doesn't initially remember your friend's brother until they start reflecting on certain trains of thought and stuff. And only after a few playthroughs can you ask about your friend about the brother, be like, hey, how come there are no pictures of your brother over here? And they're like, I don't have a brother. You're like, no, you do. I remember them. But it's really fun. It's very interesting.
It's really clever, I think, how a lot of the choices went because, because it really makes you question yourself as you're playing, what the actual what the truth is, because you're kind of in the same boat, you're kind of explained what your situation is, but you're not told everything. And there's the way he words a lot of his questions, a lot of the dialogue, makes it hard for you to figure out what's actually the truth and not, because there's some red herrings, I think, in the game, but you kind of just you have to suss out what's actually true, because it's very bait and switch, I think, because there's some things that I'm trying to remember what I thought was real, and then I ended up dying because it wasn't real. Oh, I think the bathroom is a thing where it's when you go to the bathroom, there's a bunch of hiding spots in there, and if you try to escape there when the uncle comes, it's just a bunch of dev textures and stuff, so you're kind of just trapped in this blank room, I think.
Yeah, you can hide in either the shower or the linen closet, and by the time you reach that room, reality is decaying and they appear as just textureless boxes, so another hint that things are going terribly wrong.
So the whole idea of an unreliable narrator is interesting to me in the context of a game, where it's the character you're playing as is kind of you're role playing as somebody whose perception might not be accurate or things like that. It's feels very well worn territory, in other types of fiction. But in games, I don't know, I'm kind of hard pressed to think of a ton of examples. There are definitely some. This seems like a really interesting instance of that, where
Wait, you've never played the game?
I haven't played this game.
Oh, shoot. It's so good.
The only game that I've really played out of this group is Save the Date. So.
Oh, I feel we kind of ruined some of it. Part of the fun is playing it and getting I don't know, slightly creeped out by the atmosphere, and then
It's still pretty creepy. When I played it with knowing everything, I get creeped out. He does very good atmosphere just in writing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I'm still interested in playing it. I don't mind spoilers, and I'd rather we just talk about the games.
Well, I totally lost interest in it. I can't handle creepy too well.
It's not there's no jump scares or anything. Just kind of
I might then.
I mean actual creepy atmospheres where you're
okay, well,
supposed to
no,
feel
don't play this.
bad.
No, this will unnerve you.
He did jump a couple of times when the grandfather clock rang. Time.
That would make it even worse.
I mean, honestly, I think I actually jumped once just because I wasn't expecting it. It's really great at building up a super tense atmosphere, this game. And actually, I really liked how it played around with reality and changed things on like your second and third playthrough, because that actually made me pay more attention to the text. Usually when I play these interactive like text-based games, I just end up choosing lots of options and I don't read anything carefully. I just go through the motions and sort of try to see what paths and where.
Like there's a lot of like, world building and like, I mean there's some stuff that's world building, but then like everything kind of is important, and there's like that's what I really like is, multiple playthroughs like really brings out like a lot of, there's reasons why, a lot of stuff is mentioned. And I mean, unreliable narrator is like a really hard thing. Like, I mean, like you were saying, like, I don't know that many games back. Like, I don't know that much media in general that's like been able to do it like that well.
Just occurred to me, what's it called? Dead Space. What's his face is going crazy. Isaac.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's two. I think, yeah.
I don't know. I only played one.
Yeah, but that's what I've heard. That's the best one.
There's oh man, what was that? There was some like first-person shooter that everybody was saying was like a good example of that. It's really vague, I know. Can't remember which one. Anyway, but yeah, there's lots of little examples, right? Like a very light version of that, like even Prince of Persia, like Sands of Time, right? They're like, no, that's not what happened. Like, even that is kind of like slightly a version of like recontextualizing it as like, oh no, I just told the story wrong. This is part of the story. Let's like go back a step or whatever. So there's lots of games that do a little bit of that, but yeah, I feel like there's a smaller set of games that really like plunge into the depths of what you can do with that.
I feel like text is probably like the best way to do it because, I mean, it's really like were you thinking of Spec Ops: The Line?
Yeah.
That one is. I mean, that's one I don't even want to like talk about that much because I really like it, and I think we should do it as a game club. Some point we'll do that.
Any discussion of games with an unreliable narrator is like usually the fact that the narrator is unreliable is like an important plot point somewhere where you like start to realize it. So
it's kind of like how soon you start to realize it is like, I feel like that one introduces it pretty early on. But yeah, I mean, in movies in general, like, it's really hard to like have I think like any like visual medium where you have to like, I don't know, like my kind of feelings on it is, in text it's really easy to like, warp your perception because you're kind of coming up with like everything, on your own. Like, this game uses like some imagery and some sounds, but like for the most part you can kind of picture like, how everything is, or you could come up with like your own interpretation, like with, like a movie or, more visual game, like, they have to spell everything out for you, which also means they have to like spell out like, this is where it's unreliable. I don't know. I mean, James kind of shaking his head a little.
There are unreliable narrators that don't work out too well. I'm sure Jamie's immediate thought would be Heavy Rain.
Oh yeah. Well, that game just has terrible writing in general, so.
I actually remember hearing about one game where you actually play as an unreliable reader. I can't remember the title, but it's one of those Western games where you're actually, an age-old bounty hunter who's reflecting about his bounty hunting days. But because of his old age, he doesn't remember everything. So just when this thing is going very well, suddenly just rewinds back where other listeners are recorrecting him, showing how it really is, which are often a lot tougher.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, that does sound kind of cool. I'm surprised I haven't heard of it before.
Yeah. If you end up remembering the name of that, definitely let us know, because I'd like to check that out.
I heard you say Western, I was going to be like, Red Dead Redemption.
That's like the only Western game I know.
Same. I never even played it, I just know of it.
Yeah. Yeah, but that Heavy Rain is a particularly egregious example. You're right, Robert, of a bad use of that.
It's like a super soap opera with QuickTime events, right?
Yes, that would be a good way of describing it.
So it was a specific one of the narrators that did not narrate the way a normal person would narrate.
Oh.
Basically, yeah, I think you have to be extra careful, even with an unreliable narrator to an extent, to have like some kind of internal logic to it, potentially. I don't know. Like, I'm sure there's examples that contradict that. Heavy Rain just has like glaring plot holes that just don't make sense once like the stuff is revealed.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a stupid cop-out that people use a lot. Like, if there's something logically wrong with their story, be like, oh, so-and-so is just crazy. You don't think about it. No, I've seen that used before. The unreliable narrator can make for a very good excuse, I guess. Or why did I see all that weird imagery earlier? Oh, so-and-so is crazy.
Yeah. There's a little of that in Until Dawn, I think, too, at certain points. Isn't there?
I don't recall any.
Isn't like the psychiatrist?
The psychiatrist. Oh, I don't know. Are we spoiling this here?
There's a psychiatrist? I don't remember that. I mean, I saw a little bit of...
The psychiatrist was all in, what's his name's head?
Yeah. I forget what's his name. I forget a lot of...
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of examples of games where you, or the character you're playing as, are suffering like hallucinations or things like that, right? Like Eternal Darkness, for example. It's like a whole central mechanic of Eternal Darkness to an extent. And it kind of ties in with like the Cthulhu-esque like kind of presentation. So yeah, I guess there are a fair amount of games that do some amount of using that trope. Interesting ways.
I'd like to see more games like try to do like a full, that's like the central part of the story. I mean, like my personal preference with some of this stuff, like I'd like to see more games where it's like trying to make the player feel like an unreliable narrator, because I feel like Eternal Darkness does that a lot. Like, I mean, I haven't, from videos and stuff I saw, because I haven't played it, but like, there's the stuff with the deleting the save file, fake deleting the save files, and the volume going up and down and whatnot. That kind of stuff, I think you can do a lot easier and like trick people. Pony Island, I think, is another one that kind of does the same thing where...
Pony Island?
Yeah, that's probably another game club choice at some point.
Comes highly recommended by Abby, one of our previous hosts. I mean to play that too.
That's a pretty short one. There's a little bit of that in there. Is there any other thoughts on Woolworth and Nintendo before we try to move on to the next game?
Solid 8 out of 10. We'll play again.
Yeah.
I think if I ever come close to somebody trying to play it, they wear a cross. I do not want to risk running into that demon in real life.
So,
simple precaution.
I guess the next game we can talk about is Little Inferno. I think that's the next one people played the most.
Except Jamie.
Andy.
Oh, man.
Who's played it like the most recently? Because I kind of...
Oh wait, no, you. You played it recently.
Last night, alright. Do you mind leading it a little bit? Or telling us what it's about?
Okay. So funny thing. So when I saw Little Inferno on Steam, since it came out, you'd see the advertisements for it, you'd see the screenshots and stuff like that. My thought, as this is what the game is, was going to be like those videos that you can buy where you just stare at the fireplace and it's supposed to look romantic or something.
Oh.
And I thought this is what this game is. They're really selling a game where you just stare at a crackling fire because that's all you ever saw in the screenshots.
Oh.
So when I started it up, I'm thinking to myself, what in the world could this game possibly be to actually have a game to it? And then it started up and it's like, okay, here's something, you can throw it in the fire. Okay, I guess I'll throw it in the fire. Here's some money, buy more stuff, throw it in the fire. And I'm like, this is all I'm doing is just buying things just so I can burn it? But, I mean, later on more story comes in where apparently it's very cold outside, and weird things are happening to cause that for a very, very long time. But it was, I don't know, for me playing it, I had a curiosity as to where they were going to take the story. I had a curiosity of what the next page of weird items were going to be. And the entire time I'm thinking, I'm spending over 3 hours just throwing things into a fire.
Yep.
And I'm going to bet that's what the developer had in mind, considering he's mentioned it a couple times in the game of essentially where you're just wasting your time doing repetitive things. And I'm like, yeah, thanks, okay, you just wasted 3 hours of my life.
Yeah. I kind of, like, when I played it, played the Wii U version, and that was like kind of an interesting experience because like I would play like an hour or two every night. Like I took a while just because I think it was like one of my college years and I was like just exhausted all the time. But like it was interesting because like it really felt like a mobile game, like one of those like, you know, I don't know if that was like the intent they're going for.
It
right?
was the intent, actually. I read up on it a little. They wanted to evoke that idea a lot, I think.
Because, you know, because there's like a whole thing of like you're playing the game so you can get money so you can keep playing the game. And, you know, it's that kind of,
Oh, no, I'm just nodding. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yep.
Like, and that's, like, I like that a lot. Like, I like that I was able to emulate that pretty well. I'm trying to remember, like, some of the characters, because there's, like, the mailman or something.
Weatherman.
The weatherman.
There's the weatherman. There is the next door neighbor.
Sugar Lumps.
Yeah.
There is the woman who works for the corporation. And the mailman who you apparently never see aside from one very brief moment.
I don't remember. Did you beat the game?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Alright.
You didn't?
No, I did, but I only once. I don't really remember the ending of that. Did we see the mailman in the ending?
Yeah.
I know there's a security guard you meet too.
You walk down the street and then your character doesn't recognize them. And he says, "Oh yeah, I've been to your house all the time. I'm dropping off the packages behind you."
I remember that now. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that was actually kind of cool. I like that game.
Probably gonna play it again after this because I remember liking it a lot, and it's like past the point of like my recent memories, so I don't remember it that well. So I think it's time for another playthrough of it. Should have been like a week ago, but here we are. But yeah, I mean, I liked, you know, this came out like 2000.
It was a few years ago.
Yeah, it's like it wasn't that long.
It's
ago.
after World of Goo. Can't remember how long after, but same developers.
But yeah, like I did like that. It felt like really relevant. I mean, it seems like that's sort of like the games like the developer's been trying to go for. Because I know they came out with some coding game. I forget what it was. It's like it was in a similar like aesthetic, but it was like about like binary coding or something like that, where you had to like do logic puzzles and type up code.
This sounds kind of fun. Maybe.
I wish I remembered more about it. Like if you go to their like Steam page or something, you'll probably find it. Did anyone play? Who's played World of Goo before?
A little bit.
Only a little bit.
That one was. Well, I think that was like their first game, and I remember getting like the first or second like Humble Bundle, like back when Humble Bundle was like a really big deal. But that one was, I mean, they kind of had like the same sort of aesthetic where there was like I think there's like a sign painter or something who was like the same thing as like the weatherman, where you just talk with them through messages, or they send messages to you, and they have like weird little character eyeballs, like they wouldn't get burnt up, but like
Similar aesthetic, right?
yeah.
Art design.
So they seem to have one style and keeping to it, but yeah, I mean, Little Inferno. If you get a chance to like do the Wii U version, I think that's probably the way to go, because it does like it uses like the touchpads to do like dragging stuff in, and it kind of felt like a little bit more immersive when you actually like you have to physically throw an object into the fire, which I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that.
They have now actually released it for phones, right? Like,
Probably.
in addition
I think so,
to maybe
yeah.
being a parody of a certain type of mobile game, it's now
Yeah.
available on mobile.
As with everything, it kind of just becomes its own monster. But
I remember when we were having the Limbo podcast, I wanted to bring up Little Inferno and how it kind of reminded me of that. I'd say Limbo is far more artsy and, what's the word? Ambiguous? Hard to read? I mean, yeah, the there's supposed to be some biting satire in Little Inferno. Everything's kind of like tongue-in-cheek, and it's got more of a cynical tone, I guess.
yeah, I mean they're very like direct with everything they say. I mean, because like like I do agree with that, because like Limbo was, I mean intentionally like Limbo's like vague about its themes and everything, like and Inferno's kind of like it is also kind of weird, because like it was released, or World of Goo anyway was like released around the same time where all the games kind of looked like that, where it was like a little weird and cartoony, but also like a little realistic and a little
Off-putting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
More part of my fun with playing the game was I liked unlocking pages to read the descriptions of items, actually.
Yeah. I remember like there's a point where you just kind of become numb. Like there's certain like I feel like there's like dolls or stuff that would like react.
Oh yeah, no, there's a lot of that.
Things that would react to being burnt alive, and you kind of just become numb after a while. To like.
Yes, you do. I actually, like I said earlier, I played Little Inferno with a group of friends at a convention. We all took turns burning things. And I remember thinking the game was really dumb, but like, alright, yeah, this is fun. They're like, oh, hey, go burn the bus. And I was like, alright, I set a bus on fire. It has like a little silhouette of a driver in it, right? And some kids, you set it on fire and they all start moving and screaming. I was like, what's going on?
That's horrible.
It is. It was awful. I was not expecting that. I mean, the game was kind of dark, but that just like went into full-on like nightmare territory. I was like, oh my god, I gotta put out the oh no! And then the bus exploded in slow motion, and I remember I was just sitting like on the bed in the hotel room, just like in shock, and my friends were like, oh, I think we broke Cat, and I was just like, ah.
And this is reminding me of the time I found out what it means to touch fire.
What? Oh, yeah. I have no specific recollection of that. But
For some reason, it was reminding me of watching a bunch of people at a convention play. I can't remember the name of the game, but it's a game where you just flick a light switch on and off over and over again.
Oh, is that the one with the monster?
Might be.
You, me, Nikki? Is that it? No.
I don't know if it was that.
No, there's something. Yeah, there's something with a light switch and a monster, but that's not the whole game.
No, that the one you're thinking of was an RPG. I think it was RPG Maker-ish type.
I think this game had a lot less to it than probably. It was just you turn this light switch on and off, and then after doing it like a lot of times, maybe like a tiny item would appear in this very like simply sketched room that you were in, like, and you could like drag the items around and stuff. But like playing something that mundane with like a big group of people turned into like this party game, so, because people are like determined to make it entertaining, basically.
That also has been horrifying to me because it keeps making me think about how my sister would tease me and my fear of the dark.
Oh no!
When there's just blinking lights on me, I'm just going.
We can't win with fire. We can't win with darkness.
The
What are
world's
we
full
gonna
of
do?
very scary things.
So not having played the game, like I did come to the brink of playing it when it came out. I was intrigued by it, which is part of the reason I suggested it, as one of our options this time, and I did want to play it. What intrigued me about it was like just from a quick glance, it looked like a satirical game, like kind of just poking fun at like the idea of consumption. To me, that was just the basic impression I got, and like for a holiday themed thing of like buying stuff and throwing it in a fire, it seemed seasonal to me somehow. Although we managed to do that all year round, I guess. But
Rebel against consumerism.
I had no idea that there was like this larger kind of overarching narrative of like the planet's getting colder and stuff. So
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I'd encourage you to play it through to the end because the ending is kind of cool. And the characters are fun. Yeah.
I'm curious to see like the. I think it came up maybe in our last discussion, or just when we were talking about the options for this edition of Game Club. But like, we made this game Laundry Day together. Like the first time we did a game jam here at the Game Space, and like I hadn't played Little Inferno, but I feel like some of that must have like seeped in because there's a lot of Little Inferno in Laundry Day without being like intentional. So I'm curious to play it just to compare because
Is he awake?
I don't know.
I'm fine.
Then rest.
But anyway,
I got my head down and kind of hugging my knees in my chair. I'm just sad.
it's in the Anthony zone.
He's a bit sleepy. That's okay. It's near the holidays. Everybody is.
It gets darker earlier.
That too. Yeah.
I remember what you were saying.
Oh,
Nah.
Sorry.
Laundry Day. It's a game.
I can see the
Yeah.
similarities.
I mean that game, like I very much in the design. I'd been working on mobile games, free to play mobile games specifically as a designer for years, and I wanted to like satirize that experience of playing like Farmville style games, and that's what Laundry Day was to me. Which it seems like
Yeah, Little
There's-
Inferno is actually that to a T.
yeah. So
Well, the most interesting part about it is I forgot about this mechanic until we were talking about it a little. You have wait times to buy items,
oh yeah.
but you can pay extra money or use like a form of currency. I forget what it's like
Like
tickets,
Stamps.
Yeah.
stamps. Okay, yeah, that. You can get your item rushed to you or something like that. Oh no, you can. Oh, there's the wait time, and then you order it, and I forget how this works.
You order it, the wait time starts counting down. You can click on the item and then use the stamps on it, and it makes instantaneous.
Okay, yeah, the
It-
rush job.
Yeah, it ends up better than Prime.
Okay.
Sweet deal.
Oh, that Amazon.
Does it have like in-app purchases for that stuff, or is it just like it's a strictly
It
in-game?
feels like the entire game is in-app purchases, but you don't pay real money.
Yes.
You get the coins by clicking on things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Setting spiders on fire.
More things.
Oh, you think that's bad? You set some dolls on fire and they scream and their eyes pop out and stuff.
You can set an entire planet on fire.
Yeah.
That really is horrible. No wonder the world's in such crummy shape. People keep making such terrible games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Tony games.
That's the reason. We pinpointed it.
Oh, any more thoughts about Inferno?
I like what they did with the ending.
Mhm.
The shift in perspective.
Yeah, it's smart.
When it first started, I thought it was just, this is how the epilogue is, where we just watch him do his thing. But then when I could control him, I'm like, wait, there's more to this game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that took me off guard. But I also was like, I think 2 weeks of me playing it, and then I got to that point, I was like, oh my god.
Well, me, I was trying to finish it, before bed last night, and I'm like, okay, it's now after midnight, I have work in the morning, and so by the time I got through, I was like, okay, just walk on your own, just do what you have to do, I need to get to bed.
I don't care, I just want to be done.
So,
Good game. You should play it.
All right.
Everybody here should play. I mean, it's pretty short. Well, I mean, except you're scared of it, but that's fine.
Do we want to talk about Knights? Do we have enough people who are familiar enough?
Well, I'm gonna have to get going soon anyway.
No.
Did not play it. No idea.
We tried to play it yesterday. But,
We pretty much talked about it earlier, didn't we? We told
Oh yeah.
Will told the whole story.
Something about a star.
That's all there is to say about Knights.
That's
There's
the part.
nothing else.
Well, that's the part of Nights that we were supposed to play. Was the Christmas night section. That's it.
Yeah.
Anthony is
That
Larry to Jamie.
That's what was on the event.
Yes, I know.
The thing was, the Christmas night
But we've
stage.
said everything there is to say.
We
about
did.
all versions of Nights, including Christmas Nights.
So the thing
Well,
about
that's
Christmas
all
nights
we
is that
had
it
to
was
play.
only unlocked after you finished the actual game.
Really?
Yeah.
Which I didn't realize until I had started submitting everything for it.
Was that the way it was in the original
I don't
version?
think so.
In
I
the
don't think
original,
so.
It was on a demo disc.
Yeah.
They gave it
Well,
as a demo.
I thought there was something to do with the internal clock.
Yeah, I was pretty sure that if you played the game on Christmas,
it
that's
changes the title screen to the Christmas one, but it still doesn't change the whole game.
Are you sure?
Yeah. There's, I was looking it up. I didn't know anything about this game until I started looking up stuff to write about it for this. But yeah, I think the Christmas Nights levels were the demo disc, and then there's holiday backgrounds that would pop up.
It does feel notable to me, and it's the first console game that I can remember that did a little seasonal, acknowledgement or update like that, which was, because I think consoles prior to that maybe didn't have an internal clock in that same kind of way of the date, set the date and stuff. Yeah, I remember that being a really cool Easter egg just to read about, in game magazines. And now it seems any game that has ongoing updates, which is most games now, will have these little seasonal elements to get you to come back, and go. I need to check out everything's holiday, everything's Halloween themed.
That's exactly.
I
That
gotta
is what I have to deal with right now. I have to start Overwatch now. I have to play Rocket League. All these games that now have unlocks for Christmas time that you can only get during Christmas time.
I only have Overwatch. I mean, I'm lucky. I haven't gone into anything else.
Now it's just a holiday chore.
Yes, though.
Halloween was Rocket Light,
I've
Rocket League,
given
and
up.
Dying Light, and it's
I spent a sad amount of money getting Halloween loot boxes.
Closest thing I got after that was with Pokemon. Those holiday things where Halloween they had more ghost type Pokemon, and now with Christmas, a Pikachu with a Santa hat showing up.
Oh, that's cute.
yeah.
Sweet.
And I came so close to being near one too on the way over here.
Does he keep the cat? Does he keep the hat after you catch him?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you already have a
That's
Pikachu,
tempting.
if you already have a Pikachu, it won't have a hat on.
No, I wouldn't expect it to.
You have to catch a Pikachu.
It was hatless when I caught it. I wouldn't expect it to magically gain a hat. That doesn't happen.
That's the rules.
At this point, I have a hard time not finding it kind of cynical now, all that stuff. I guess just because it's expected now. Some developers, I think the Pokemon Go example is kind of cool, where it really affects your chances of getting certain types of Pokemon. It really, I don't know, they give a little more thought, the developers, to some kind of gameplay impact that still fits the holiday theme. But Malibu Stacy has a new hat. It's I don't know. That seems to be the default thing that developers do, just because it's easy. And
So you think they do it with a grimace on their face,
yeah.
a big old frown?
Well, I worked on games that we did this for, and I was frowning all the time, just like I am now.
I mean, I kind of want to stand by Overwatch, but I found the Halloween stuff they did, for the holiday, really, really fun. Some of the skins were awesome, and they had, do you guys play it at Overwatch at all? Or?
Yeah, I do.
I haven't in God, like a month or two, but like
Yeah, it's been a while.
it's a fun game. I really like it. It makes me smile.
Yeah, I gotta play.
There was game like back when they used to not make a Lego game about every movie that came out.
Mm.
They had like Lego games that were like actually about like you'd have like a Lego world and you just like build stuff.
Ooh.
And one of the ones I was like really into when I was a kid was Lego Loco, which was like you build this like train layout.
Mm.
And one thing they did was really interesting is like this was like mid 90s or something, but they did the same thing like Knights did, where when your clock was like around winter time, all the maps would like turn into like winter maps and themes. But they did like for like every holiday they had like something really weird, like all the little on Halloween all the minifigures would turn into skeletons and like it'd be this weird haunted house thing. And I think stuff like that is like cooler because it's like I think it's cool when they make the game and then they have like stuff set already. Because like I agree where like Overwatch and mobile games and everything, like they make these events, but like they develop them up until it's released, and then they're like they have to come back and try it. It's not like a little surprise because it like in the Lego game, like it wasn't even a feature mentioned, but like there's like 16 holidays where the entire aesthetic of the game changes for like each holiday for like about a week or two.
Yeah.
And it's like really interesting. I don't know. That's like one of my favorite like Easter eggs. But
Yeah. I mean, I remember how exciting like it was just to, like I said, just to read about Christmas nights. I was like, what? Unbelievable!
yeah.
How does the game know that it's this holiday?
I had that
It
feeling
thinks
with
it's people.
one of the Ninja Turtle games. As you play through the stage, there's the clock in the background, and it gave you the actual time. I can't remember which system it was on, but it must have been able to read system time off of the system, and I was like, oh, that was pretty cool.
Pokemon Silver and Pokemon Crystal. It was the coolest thing ever to catch like different Pokemon at night. So awesome.
Oh,
Love it.
I didn't like that mechanic.
Why not?
I don't know. I like to play the game when I want to play it.
Yeah.
I gotta admit, the setting of Pokemon Moon is really stupid. The whole. Do you guys know about that?
What?
Yeah.
12-hour time separation.
Ice and Rock.
So it's
Pokemon
night.
Ice and Rock. Where it has a day form and night form.
No. Pokemon Moon is technically 12 hours ahead of like the U.S. and people in our hemisphere. So I have to trick my DS into thinking the clock is actually 12 hours ahead. Like, I don't want to play at night all the time, and when I play is during the day, but it'll be like 2 a.m. for my stupid 13-year-old character, and it just feels weird.
Well, that's tough when the game itself relies on the date and the time. I mean, I think my Animal Crossing game is still stuck at 2001.
Wow. Okay.
I just look at if I ever want to play this again, I got to set the time back to 2001. I'll catch up eventually.
Undertale has a little Easter egg like that, right? As well, like the So Sorry character that only shows up at like a very specific date and time.
Yeah.
Oh
So-
yeah, right. The art club meeting. I don't even know about the other guy. What's it called? Glide. I don't know how he shows up.
Yeah, just fun-filled tidbit. Maybe. But like working on games that had that kind of timer mechanic, as popularized by Farmville and its ilk. Because a lot of the monetization of those games is based on like getting people to feel impatient and then spend money to speed things up. Like they really don't want players to just like be setting their time ahead, right? So that's why like a lot of them are moving towards these kind of server authoritative things where like you can only do so much on your end to actually like speed up the in-game time, and they'll try to like detect when you're doing it and like kind of impose some sanctions on you. Different games do like different ways of penalizing you, but should try it sometime with some free-to-play mobile games that have timers in there. See if you can cheat them by changing your clock. I mean, a lot of phones now, like the iPhones, like sync the internal clock, but you can change the time zones and stuff. So spend an inordinate amount of programming resources trying to make sure that didn't happen on some of these things.
That's how I was feeling with Little Inferno when I had to wait for the items to arrive. Prior to that far into the game, I was collecting all my stamps and not using them. I reached 99 stamps at one point. Once you hit 99, it stops collecting them. You spend them or you waste them. But then I got to the point where it's like, okay, 5 minutes for this item to arrive, stamp. Because I did not want to wait around for whatever to happen. It's like I reached my breaking point. It's like, okay, stamp.
Yeah. It's one of the things that most consistently works in terms of like things people actually spend money to do. Is just like just get it done right now. Like I don't want to wait.
Time events.
Yeah, that too.
Making you think you have no time or too much time.
We're not actually having the time to get those unlockable dresses.
Since we've talked about with some of these games, like like we talked about other games that had kind of unreliable narrator thing. Like, can anybody think of? I can think of some games that take the whole like making multiple saves and kind of quick loading, quick saving, and they make that into like a game mechanic. Can people think of games? Yeah, of course. But can people think of games that take the whole like changing your system clock time and like actually make that into like a key aspect of the game? Like the way that you
like there was a Metal Gear that did something like that.
The Psycho Mantis read your memory card and told you, so you like Castlevania? And he made the screen blank out and it said Hideo on it.
There was something in Snake Eater, now that I think of it, around like actually changing the time. It wasn't necessarily like the intended solution, but the fight with the end, like that boss can die of old age and it can happen if you just like don't play the game for like a couple weeks, I think, and come back. But a lot of people just sit there.
I know like the weirdest things about Metal Gear. I know, for instance, at the end has a parrot.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's a sniper. I don't know much else about him.
He's a really old guy, and if you manage to avoid him long, he just dies of old age.
Yeah, and I know there's a guy named Otacon. Did I say that right? Okay.
As far as
and then he has a stepsister or something. That doesn't end well. And there's some lady named Big Boss, and she's bad, but she's not bad.
She's simply called the Boss, and she essentially sacrificed herself to stop World War III. But people just remembered her as being a bad guy.
Spoilers.
Yeah, it's a good thing that I can forget things pretty easily because I've only played the first one.
I remember hearing on one of the older ones, there was a boss that had psychic powers, and he would actually use them to try to mess up your controller. And to avoid doing that, you'd have to
plug it into the second port. Yeah.
Oh, Kojima.
I remember when we were playing PT and that's on live stream somewhere.
I don't.
Never played it.
We didn't have
jump scares.
We didn't have a good time when we were playing it at like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
It's the worst. I really appreciate good horror games, but I'm just a complete and utter wuss when it comes to actually watching or playing horror stuff.
I think it's probably a very good game, but not if you play it at like 4 a.m. during a 24-hour gaming marathon, because it's an exhausting game to play under any circumstances, I think, but I came in exhausted, and then it just pretty much broke me.
I think I joined the Twitch stream probably like right after you guys had finished playing that.
You poor soul.
I want to see this. And I missed
so you missed it. You're lucky then, actually.
I remember like passing out at some point, and then I wake up, and it's like, wait, you beat it? Like,
because a lot of the puzzles are not easy to figure out, or at least they weren't for me. Like, I was playing it very erratically, and I think it must not be very fun to watch.
I want to say, do you have like a specific game in mind when you're saying like?
No, I was just wondering if people could think of, because I can think of games again, like we talked, like Undertale and other examples of like all the things that players do. They then try to like hinge the game around that, or like turn it into like a game mechanic, right? And I feel like there's so many that's one of those things that players do, is like change the system clock to like get around something, but like a game that actually then tries to detect when you've done that, or like make that into something you have to do in order to advance.
That would be really cool, actually.
A game that I know of that works good with that narrator mechanic we talked about earlier is Puppeteer.
Oh, cool.
But that game is basically like a great big interactive puppet theater, and you have a narrator who's trying to tell the story, but he actually interacts with the characters every now and about how while he's telling the story. Like, the clock tower runs on a magic pendulum that never had to be wound. It was meant in scientific perfection. You just said it was magic. I just tried to create the atmosphere of all lights.
Yeah, I've seen that game. It looked cool to check it out.
Yeah, it does sound neat.
I think we gotta get going now.
Alright,
We'll
See you next
head
time.
now. See you later.
If any of you got Pokemon Go, there's a Dratini nearby.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay, thanks. I don't know if I want to download it on my phone, though. That'll take forever.
Back on topic, I actually had done the date thing myself in one of my games. For my Kyle's Quest game, No Bones About It, I made it so that this one nondescript room in an inn in this one town, it's normally you can't open the door to get into the inn, but if you go on June 30th, my birthday, you can open the door and there I am, my little avatar, and he's like, "Hey, you found my room, and here's a special gift for you." And I gave a special item to the player. So I was like, I like that effect so much, I put it in my own game.
Nice, yeah. Yeah, there's some really fun examples of, games that just have like a time, even if it's not reliant on like how the player actually sees that. My favorite example is, I wrote an article quite a while back about like game developers who kind of subverted their own game somehow, or like put in a feature without like telling anybody else that they were working with. There's a game called Simcopter released by Maxis, and one of the developers put in these Speedo men who only appear on his birthday. There's his birthday, his boyfriend's birthday, and I think like Friday the 13th or something like that. So you fly your copter around, and then suddenly there's like all these Speedo men like swarm around your helicopter and just like jump around and stuff. So,
Hilarious.
yeah, and I suggest reading up on the whole story behind that because it's fascinating, like the circumstances that led to this developer wanting to put it in, and yeah, it's a cool story.
It's actually kind of fun when people can sneak into games, especially creepy stuff.
There's like tons of stories about that.
Yeah, Ben drowned and...
Well, I mean, like, Ben drowns. I wish Ben drowned was like a real game. We're talking about like, well, it is real. No,
No, it's not. You're totally made up. There isn't a possessed Majora's Mask game.
But I mean, I like it when there's stuff that like no one else knows about except like 3 people. I'm sure there's like I'm sure I've done that like on a few school projects. I was very frustrated with my team.
Yeah.
There's like a little enter in the right code. There's like a little message. I have a friend who actually I just remember why I need to be very vague about it, but she made this like one game in the group, and when they submitted it, she had hidden dicks everywhere. And
Oh my God.
like it's like a pixelated game or something, but like, it's just like apparently like I've never seen one, but she swears to God like she snuck them into like the final build. And it's like, I mean, stuff like that's kind of
Yeah, programmers tend to find ways to vent one way or the other. Yeah.
The John Romero Doom 2, where you have to like the final boss, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's a classic.
Yeah, the examples that I mentioned in this article, like I kind of wrote like just a page about each one. One was the announcer voice in Wave Race. Did you ever like hear the alternate announcer? Wave Race, has a area where you can enter like cheat codes. But this code is like separate from that, the way you actually have to do this whole convoluted set of things, and it replaces the default announcer with this kind of amateurish sounding, like it sounds like it could just be one surly developer who recorded these, and they're just things that insult the player, like nothing too offensive, but they're just constantly, putting you down as you're playing. So that was a fun one. What were some of the other ones? The famous Easter egg of the creator of Adventure, the Atari game, back when Atari didn't allow developer credits because they didn't want anybody stealing their talent, so you couldn't put your credits in the game. So in Adventure, the developer put this secret, like really hard to find room that had his name in like glowing, pulsing, like colored letters.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was the Naughty Dog one, which was cool and edgy back in the Play Aloud days. They replaced their logo with a naked lady. It's unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How scandalous.
You had to hold down a bunch of buttons and then reset the game. And then you were an adult.
All right.
Yeah.
Adults put that in.
Right.
The game.
That's what we call mature among game developers, and what other people call immature.
But they're not adults, so that doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's in this super generic Naughty Dog game called Rings of Power, which is like this Tolkien pastiche, but really bad RPG. So that's the one memorable thing about that game. And then there was a book. There's actually a book called J-Pod, which the whole plot of the book is disgruntled game developers putting in this cave that has like a homicidal Ronald McDonald in it, like an unrelated game. It's basically like this very thinly fictionalized version of Electronic Arts that all takes place in. It's put by Douglas Copeland. Anyway, I've led us far astray. The only other game I could think of as far as like having to really think about the time as the player, that's more broadly interpreting what I was saying before, but like Boktai came to mind. I think as we were talking about Kojima, the vampire game with the like solar sensor.
Who's excited for Death Stranding? I am!
After PT, I don't know.
Oh, come on, I am scared to death of that game, but I'm probably going to play Death Stranding and probably won't be as scary, right? Right?
Maybe. I remember the original System Shock had like an ultra hard mode where you had to beat the game in like 6 hours, and it was like something where like at the beginning you're told you're like poisoned or something, and you have to beat like the entire game in one run, and if you die you have to just start over. But it's like after 6 hours your character just dies and that's it.
Wow.
And I don't know if there's like, I'm sure people like figured out ways to like get around that. But I mean that was interesting to me because that kind of like really makes you like, you kind of have to like set aside you have to set aside 6 hours.
Yeah. Don't mess up.
Well, even worse is the first two Rock Band games had Bladder of Steel. You had to play through every single song without pausing, without failing, and it totaled over 6 hours.
Wow.
So,
That's evil.
yeah.
It's no more than like Bladder of Steel. That's like Bladder of Steel and don't eat and don't sleep. And
And it may have had to been an expert too, I can't remember.
Sure, there's like some like obscure Wii game that like kind of like forces you to play for like an extended amount of time. Like I'm sure someone came up with something. It's that, I don't know. It's like when we talk about like stuff like that, kind of there's like always at the tip of my tongue. There's like some game I'm thinking of that I don't remember. So that's always fun to talk about.
It's fun to almost talk about.
Yeah. Do we think we're going to be done?
We can't talk about Save the Date.
No.
I've managed to put in as many spoilers for other unrelated games as possible into this podcast.
Wow.
But no Save the Date for us.
Could you really want to talk about it?
No, I want to play.
Yeah.
We could add it to the next medley.
I mean, I could just leave right now, or you. I mean, I could leave.
Nah, I don't want to talk about it.
All right.
Anthony and I have already discussed it at length. We played it together, actually. I made Anthony sit down with me and play it after I'd already played it.
Yeah.
It's good. It takes like an hour, probably an hour and a half tops. It's free. It's good. Play it.
Sounds really good.
Maybe we'll discuss it at a future game club.
Maybe.
It does connect in some interesting ways to the games we played this time, so could have been a good one to discuss.
Aw, that's kind of a bummer.
If, like I said, if you liked Undertale, it's weird to say if you liked Undertale, because Undertale has a lot more stuff going on than Save the Date.
Well, I mean, it's a free game.
If you liked one specific part of Undertale that I can't identify without spoiling too much, you might like Save the Date. Some of the things that we were talking about related to the uncle that worked for Nintendo or whatever it's called. I think if you like that, you might like Save the Date as well, because just a lot of things in terms of like playing around with the player's perception and the player's role. Seems like there's a common thread between those games.
Hey, William Carpentier here. Next month is going to be my first time with hosting a game club. Prepare to dive into something new and tasty with Oddworld.